Name is Gaurav. Journey. Go to the market. And especially for B2B market, what we've seen is pricing is a very big issue. Now, over to you.
Gaurav, your voice was kind of breaking off. So if you could just log off from the video and start once again, it would be great. Nothing was clear.
Gaurav, did you hear that? Would you mind repeating what you said because your voice was getting cut?
I believe he was facing some technical issues. We'll just give it another 5 minutes and then we'll start. Hope that's okay with you, Sowmya?
Yeah. Sure, that works.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi, Rupa, can you hear me now?
Yes, you're clear now.
Okay, all right. I'm just gonna share my screen again.
You can just start with the introductions and then, we were not able to hear you at all. So
Right.
if you can just start with the introductions once again, and then you may hand it over to
Yes,
Sowmya.
right.
Yeah.
All right. So hi. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gaurav, and I'm part of 10,000 Startups team. And we have all joined here for a session today on go-to-market and pricing for early stage B2B startups. What we have seen for the early stage startup, that this is a very important phase, the early, the early phase of the early journey in your startup entrepreneurship. And over here we seek as much as advice as possible, and therefore we have with us Sowmya Murthy. Sowmya is actually the senior product manager at Intuit. She has over 11 years of experience in building products and launching it into the markets. She had the opportunity to launch products in UK, US, and India market. So she is very well versed, with regards to launching product and defining the strategy, especially in the B2B sector. So I would like to invite Sowmya on the stage. Sowmya.
Thank you, Gaurav. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, and thanks a lot for joining today's session for Beginner's Guide to Go-to-Market Strategy and Pricing for B2B Startups. Going to the next slide, I'm Sowmya Murthy, and I'm a senior product manager at Intuit, and I currently work on QuickBooks Desktop Payroll, helping small and medium-sized businesses in US and Canada pay their employees. I'm a design thinking coach, and I also help startups in developing deep customer empathy and choosing the most impactful problems to solve. When we wanted to talk about B2B space, one thing that struck me was that I started my career in the B2B space. So I started as an engineer about 11 years back, building these really large IBM servers, System Z and System Ps. And as a young engineer, I do remember that the release cycles themselves were very long, and there was a lot of focus on customization, high touch discussions with our customers. And interestingly, the number of customers, to name them, were very few. And when I say they were very few, I was comparing them with the number of customers my friend who was at Amazon was dealing with. Her product, in my mind, seemed to be so impactful because it was reaching millions and millions of customers, whereas the servers that we were building were only impacting a few lives. I was really very naive, and I thought B2B is a very simple segment to deal with, lot of time on your hand, and we can crack it very easily. But all of this, the the wonderful bubble that I was living in was burst when I became a product manager for a B2B product. So at that time, I realized that most of the literature around products and how to build them, how to price them, the strategy is extremely skewed towards B2C products. And they generalize the practices for B2B. So today we can look at some frameworks which can be applied for all types of businesses. However, some of the ground strategies have to be only customized to do well in the B2B space. So with that, the agenda will be, we will take a look at the startup ecosystem in India very briefly, especially with the B2B lens. And then we'll talk about what does a go-to-market strategy look like? What does it mean for a B2B startup? And what are the various ways in which you could, look at pricing strategy in this space? Now, so moving on to the next slide. So when we, yeah. So when we were thinking of this topic, B2B. So whenever we think of the Indian ecosystem when it comes to startups, some of the names that come very easily to our minds are Flipkart, Myntra, Jabongs of the world. But, and if you see, most of them are B2C startups. So I was like, except for some of the really large startups that I know who have now become unicorns, it led me to think: is how big is the B2B space right now in India? So if you see, as of 2020 December, we have about 4,200 B2B tech startups, and a whooping 43% of the B2B unicorns, or the unicorns that we have in India, are B2B products. Now, there are a lot of sectors in which B2B segment is actually advancing. However, these four areas, namely enterprise, BFSI, healthcare, and retail, are the predominant sectors, comprising about 63%. Then I went on to look to see, are we even doing advanced tech? How are we doing on the innovation? And how are these small startups helping larger organizations use advanced tech? So 24% of the B2B startups in India actually are into advanced tech, doing AI, ML, big data, IoT, blockchain, and helping larger organizations or other small and medium businesses scale. Finally, funding. This is something that interests all of us because when we go into future slides, we will talk about it. So the market does not look that dismal. Actually, by end of 2020, about $3 billion were received in funding by startups in India in the B2B space. So these numbers actually look very promising and very interesting. However, we also talk, however, if you really see the failure rate of Sorry, I'm able to hear them.
I would request everyone to please be on mute. Except Sowmya, please, everyone. Yeah, Sowmya, you can.
Yeah. So swiftly going on. So what is interesting is the failure rate of startups in India and across the globe is also equally alarming. So if you see, conducted over the years. So you might hear these numbers often. 9 out of every 10 startups yeah. If you believe that you're venture backed and you have enough funding and you will do really well in the space, that also seems to be untrue. About 7.5 out of every 10 venture backed startups also fail in the first 5 years of operation. In fact, 2 out of 10 new businesses fail in the first year of operations itself. So when I looked at these numbers, I spoke to the startups that I work with, and I also did a bit of secondary research. Some of the top reasons that founders of early startups give for their failures is, oh, I don't have funding, lack of funding. Second one could be lack of innovation. Maybe we copied a model which was working really well elsewhere and we copied that. So there is a lack of innovation. And the third one was not having a good management team. In fact, these were also the reasons that I quoted when the early stage startup I was a part of tanked. And per statistics, we were also one of those startups that tanked in the first 5 years of operation. It took us just a year and a half to tank. However, in retrospection, I do see that lack of understanding about the product market fit, the value proposition that we were offering as a product, concentration or lack of concentration, if I may say, on distribution channels, and zero knowledge and zero thought about pricing led to one failure after another. And as you see, 6 out of 10 startups fail in the first 5 years of operation due to the lack of a good GTM strategy, and not because of lack of funding or lack of innovation or a good management team. I'll just let that sink in. So GTM is, or go-to-market strategy is very, very important to focus on for startups. Now, I will let you all watch a video about one startup that created a furore in the market and very quickly fizzled out.
Is it visible?
Yes. Gaurav, would we want to pause and let it buffer a little because it is looking very pixelated.
Sowmya, I guess, in my laptop it's playing okay, but I guess.
Yeah, when it's streaming, I think there's a bit of a problem. So I'm not sure how clear it was to everyone who viewed the video.
Right. Maybe I can try playing it once again and
let's give it a try. Second time might be the charm.
see.
So, so what you saw in the video is Juicero. So if you move to the next slide, Gaurav. So what you see is Juicero. Juicero was actually a startup with about $118 million in funding in the very first year of, in fact, in the first 2 months of launch itself. So when one thinks of Juicero, it seems highly improbable that a product which helps one maintain a healthy lifestyle and drink juices and having received such high funding could have shut down. So what you saw in the video was Juicero claimed that you needed their machine to actually squeeze juices from the proprietary juice packs that you buy from them. So these juice packs had fresh cut fruits, and you needed the machine to exert enough force. The force which the founders claimed could actually lift 2 full Tesla cars up to squeeze the juice out of the pack. However, as you saw, Bloomberg, apart from Bloomberg, several other independent agencies conducted squeeze tests, and they prove that you do not need a $699 luxury juicer to squeeze the juice out of the packs. So when we look at Juicero and you see their model, the lesson that we learn here is 2 important aspects of your go-to-market strategy, and which is what many people normally ignore. The first one is actually understanding the user base and testing your product with your users before going to the market to see if there is a real product market fit, if there is a real problem that you're trying to solve for your users. And the second one is to test the pricing of the products. Yeah. So that was Juicero. Now, from this, this is actually a consumer product. However, the principles do not really change. You have to understand the user base that you're actually taking this product to, and what is the right pricing for that user base. So that is what we learned from Juicero. So now let us very quickly look at what does a go-to-market strategy mean, right? To keep it very simple, it is nothing but a simple tactical action plan that outlines the steps that are necessary to succeed in either a new market or with a new customer. Now it can apply to pretty much anything, from launching new products and services to relaunching your company at a later state or a brand, or even moving a current product into a new market. Now a good go-to-market strategy serves a couple of purposes. First, it clarifies why you're launching your product, who it's for, and how you're going to tackle the never easy job of getting them to engage with and buy it. The second, it actually forces you to think through all the issues your customers will face when presented with your product. This helps make sure you can give them the best experience possible, and most importantly, especially for a B2B startup, to build trust with your customers. Now, a good GTM strategy establishes a framework that helps you measure your progress. And as we move further, we will learn more about why measuring your progress is very important. And it helps you measure your progress, and as you're measuring it, it also helps you find and address any issues that could become blockers for your progress in future. Okay. Now, how do we really, there are multiple ways in which we can think about a go-to-market strategy. One of the ways I like to think about a go-to-market strategy is think about it from your product and the customer's perspective. Every time a customer chooses to buy a product, it is because they want to get something done. Now the customer could be trying to get something done, which could be a pretty new space and there is nothing that exists. Or they could be trying to get something done either more cheaply or in a better way. So based on this, a framework was created where a 2x2 matrix categorizes the products into 4 quadrants. If you see the x-axis, we are talking about the price. Can we charge more or can we charge less? And the y-axis talks about how does this product or service get your job done? Does it get your job done better or does it get your job done worse? I'll get to the get your job done worse. One might wonder, oh, if it's not really doing a good job, why would I even want to buy the product? Now, so as you see in the quadrants, there are 4 types of products now. Products which are better and more expensive. The second one is products which are better and less expensive. Then the products which are worse and less expensive. And finally, the space of products which are worse and are more expensive than what exists in the market. Now, based on these types of products, we can categorize the types of customers. So on the next slide, if we see, we can categorize the types of customers who might be targeted with this product or service offering in each quadrant. So if you think about it, the first quadrant at the top left quadrant, a better performing and a more expensive product will only appeal to customers who are underserved at this moment. These are customers who have unmet needs and hence they are willing to pay a premium to get a job done better. Now, the next quadrant, if we move to the one on the right, top right, a better performing but a less expensive product will appeal to all types of customers, actually. The third quadrant is on the bottom right. If I give you a product which doesn't perform as well as what is already existing, but I price it at a lower price, it will appeal to overserved customers. When I say overserved customers, the needs of these customers have been met by the product that already exists in the market. But they might still be willing to purchase this. I'm sorry.
Sorry, I guess someone has, someone's mic is not mute. I'll request everyone to please be on mute. Right, Sowmya, you can go ahead.
Okay, sure. So, and as we go to the next slide, I'll talk about examples of what kind of products exist in each of these quadrant today as well, so that you can map as to what is the right strategy that might apply to you. Now, if you're extremely overserved, you might still be willing to purchase a cheaper product, even if it doesn't perform as well as your current solution. And finally, worst performing product, right? This is very interesting. You have a product which doesn't do the job and it is extremely expensive as hell. But even then, customers are going to use it. So this will only appeal to customers for whom there are limited or absolutely no alternatives available, right? And finally, if you see at the center, that is something that I like to call as products that are stuck in the middle. You know, that is what Michael Porter used to call it. These are the products that only get job done slightly better or slightly cheaper. Such products will likely fail to attract any new customers, and this would be a poor strategy for a new market entrant. But if you're already an incumbent company, this is a strategy that you could apply to retain your existing customers, or even as you grow into future, when retention is the primary key in your mind, at that point in time, this is a strategy that you could clearly apply. So now that we have established the type of products and the type of customers that would like to use these products, let's look at what are the distinctive strategies that one could apply in each of these quadrants. So each of these 5 situations actually warrant their own distinct strategy. So they are 5 as the 5 areas. We'll start, it's the differentiated strategy, dominant strategy, disruptive, discrete, and sustaining. Now, differentiated strategy is used by companies like Apple, Sony's PlayStation, the original model, Emirates Airlines international flights, tickets. If you think about a BMW high-end sports car, or even the very recent Dyson vacuum cleaner, or their hair curlers, right? These are companies that use differentiated strategy. Now, why differentiated strategy? Because these companies have discovered a population of underserved customers with a new product or service offering that gets a job or multiple of their jobs done significantly better. And as a result, these customers are willing to pay a higher price. So if you talk about a BMW sports car, if someone is really interested in driving at super high speeds and in a specific space, they would love to go for a BMW sports car. Dyson vacuum cleaner claims that a lot of your unseen, invisible kind of pollens and everything is sucked out of your carpets and keeps the air clean. And there's a new technology out in place. It's very light. So these are the kind of companies or the products, that can use differentiated strategy. Now, coming to products like Google search or Google AdWords or your Netflix streaming video or UberX. Now, these are the companies that will use, or companies of this nature will use a dominant strategy. Now, what are these kinds of companies? Now, these companies target all consumers in the market. They do not really differentiate that, you're a new or an old customer. And they will target customers with a new product or a service offering that gets a job done significantly better, but for significantly less amount of time. Then the third one is, think about Google Docs. So when Google Docs was launched, we had a lot of customers using Microsoft Office, but they switched to Google Docs. Think about Intuit's TurboTax. Earlier, customers used to go for traditional tax services, paying a lot of money, but then with TurboTax, they can do it themselves at a much lower price or free. Or even Coursera's online educational services relative to traditional universities. These are the kind of products or companies that use disruptive strategy. Now, why disruptive? Because they have discovered a target audience of overserved customers or non-consumers with a new product or service offering that enables them to get a job done more, the most important keyword being cheaply, but maybe not as well as their competing solutions. Of course, Microsoft Office has many more features than Google Docs does. But then does it help me do the basic functionality that I need? Yes, of course it does. So I will go ahead and use Google Docs. Maybe an accountant who files my taxes might offer a lot more insights than TurboTax might. But this helps me get my job done relatively better, even and cheaper. And so I will actually go with TurboTax. That is the logic that would be applied by these customers. Finally, this space, the discrete strategy space, is very interesting. Every time I go to PVR to watch a movie. I mean, this was pre-lockdown and pre-COVID times. It always irked me that they pat you for, any food items that you might be carrying. Apart from paying for an extremely overpriced ticket, they also expected me. Yeah, sorry about that. So every time I go to PVR, they expect me to now buy popcorn, snacks from them, right? Now, these are the companies, or even when you go to the airport, the 200 rupees Coke or the 200 rupees masala dosa that we eat, these are the kind of companies that are applying the discrete strategy because they have found a group of customers who are very restricted, either legally, physically, or emotionally, to get their job done. So these are the kind of companies or products where discrete strategy can be applied. And finally, the center, which is your sustaining strategy. A company pursues a sustaining strategy when it introduces a new product or service offering that gets the job done only slightly better or only slightly cheaper. I mean, there is no clear distinction between the other products. And there are examples of offering that successfully employ this, which is plentiful. It could be your Samsung phones. There are so many other things that you can actually think of. Now, after having seen this, now that we started with understanding the space and what are the common mistakes that one might make when they are thinking of a go-to-marketing strategy. Market strategy, the most important one being not having a go-to-market strategy. And then we learned what are the various growth strategy models that one has, which they can look at. Now, after seeing all of this, now we are ready to come up with a go-to-marketing strategy of our own. So we know the product or the service that we are trying to offer, and now we want to prepare a go-to-market strategy for that product or service. A good GTM strategy includes 5 core components. In some cases, you might see 4, in some cases, you might see 7 because we might split it across. But these are the essential components of a go-to-market strategy. The first one is which markets will be targeted to sell the product or service, also known as market definition. And the second one is who is the target audience within these markets. So when you combine market definition and customers, it is also known as the right product market mix, or in many cases, it could also be the market product mix, because sometimes we are trying to fit a product into a market and it might not work. So you might want to explore what is the right market for your product and then maybe try to fit in there. If you do not fit in any of the markets, then it might be important for you to pivot, because maybe the product or the service that you're trying to offer might not be solving for a significant problem in any of the markets or for any of your customers. Then, after we have identified the product market fix, we have to think of how will the product or service be delivered to the customers. And that is what we call the distribution model. Then, after all of this has been sorted, what is being sold to our customers and what is the unique value or primary difference when compared to other products or services in the market is something that we would have to determine. And that is based on the product messaging and the position. And then last but the most important, which is the price. how much should the product or service cost for each of your customer group? So when you are defining your customers, it might not be necessary that you have a single customer that you're selling this to. There could be a group of customers that you're trying to sell this to. So identifying what is the right price for each of these customers becomes very important. Now, moving to the next slide. There are many ways in which a good GTM strategy can be built. However, if we use these 7 steps in any of the markets, either B2B or B2C, we can build a very good GTM strategy. So if you really see, you have these 7 steps. So before we get into these 7 steps, I would like to tell you a story. So there was this guy who was drinking a cup of coffee at home, and his wife was at the kitchen table, and she was frantically trying to balance the family's books. She had a lot of receipts and bills that were strewn on the table, and she was trying to make sense out of these bills. Now, when he saw his wife struggling, it got him thinking, are there any other such customers who might also be struggling to, with this problem of balancing their books? And when he extended it a little further, is there any other audience, who might be facing a similar problem? So what he did is he looked at people who are trying to balance their family books or personal accounts as the target market. And the problem that they were facing was trying to balance the book. And when they were not able to do that, they were feeling extremely frustrated. So with that, based on all this input, he came up with a product let me not take the name of the product, which he assumed will sell like hotcakes. But it did not. And he didn't know why. So when he tried to figure out why, he realized that though he had tried to make the product simple or trying to solve for the problem for the target market, he had not really understood the depth of the solutioning. So what he did is he went into accountants' offices and he followed them there, sat with them, observed what they were doing and how they were using other accounting software. And based on his observation and interviews, he figured out that there could be more potential problems with the product, and he fixed the product. Then that is when a new company came into existence. And if you go to the next slide, that was Intuit. So even Intuit, when we started off, we did not really have a great GTM, right? We just had a product which we thought solves for a problem, and we tried to launch into the market. However, we were met with a lot of failures. So if you look at the previous slide, only when Scott Cook went through each of these 7 steps was he able to build the product that we see today, or the company that we see today. You always start with your target market and ideal customer profile. It is extremely important for you to identify the right problem. So very often what we do is we start with a solution. I have a solution in mind, and now I'm going to force fit a target market or an ideal customer profile. And that is where most of the problems start. So understand your target market and what are the various problems that your target market is, facing. You might want to find their demographics, their psychological attributes, geographical locations, and interests to fit the best product market fit. So some questions that you might be asking here is, who will your most engaged and profitable customers be? What problems are you solving for them? And how do you want their customer experience to be? Right? So when it comes to Quicken, we are looking at people who are trying to balance their books. And similarly, for so many other products, you would want to define your target market with several customer personas. The second step is you define your offer and value proposition. The value proposition describes in just one or two sentences how your product solves your prospects' problems and makes their lives easier and better. So very often, when we ask startups to describe their value proposition, they are not able to, explain. Or when they explain it, they use a lot of buzzwords. The simplest way to create a good value proposition is to come up with the most convincing, not a 90-second, but a 30-second elevator pitch for your product. If you can come up with a 30-second elevator pitch, then you can be assured that you have gone extremely specific in your target market. And as a result, you're able to come up with a very compelling value proposition. If you cannot do this, your company might not stand out from the noise. Now, the third one is you being able to define your brand and positioning, right? You want to come up with a brand for your product or service and position it correctly in front of your audiences. Now, and this is done in terms of, the right product messaging. It could be, it could be one of these, right? How do you want your product or service to be perceived by your target audience? How do you really set yourself apart from other competitors? And most importantly, what are the benefits that you want to emphasize the most when you go to market? Once you have identified your target audience, value proposition, brand and positioning, you have to now decide how will you take this to your customers. So where will you find your target prospects? So you need to really know that about your target audience. Where exactly are they buying from today? Something similar or a similar product, where exactly are they buying a similar product today? Or what are the avenues your target audience is buying a product or other products or services today? How do they want to interact with you? You would want to decide what best suits these people. What is the best distribution model that fits your offer? And finally, this is the most important one. How do you really integrate your channels for a seamless customer experience? And finally, the fifth step is deciding on the right pricing strategy, which we will actually talk about a little bit in depth in the next couple of slides. So by following these 7 steps, starting always with your customer and their problems, and choosing the right metrics to monitor your progress, I think you should be able to come up with a great GTM strategy. However, one of the key mistakes that people make is to believe that a GTM strategy is a one-time strategy. A GTM strategy is a living piece of document to which all your stakeholders will contribute over a period of time, and you're refining it. Because as you grow, as your company grows, your customers' needs would change, or your customers themselves might change. Your target audience could be different. So keep this as a living document and keep refining, keep measuring your success so that you're able to be as competitive and as relevant in the market that you choose to be. So by doing this, as you can see, so by doing this, so quickly moving to the next slide. So by doing this, we see that Intuit has been in the market, and so have other companies been in the market for 35 years or more, or even longer, other companies. And today, if we go to the next slide, if you see any company which is doing really well, actually, Gaurav, moving to the next slide. Yeah, companies always focus on keeping their GTM a live document and always focus on the customers they serve. So if you see here, we always talk about what we are trying to do for our customers and the ecosystem we operate in and whom we serve. So it is always about our customers. Now, swiftly moving to the next slide. Now that if you see in the last couple of, in the last section, what we did is we covered the go-to-market strategy. Now, pricing is a very important aspect of go-to-market strategy. It is not really a separate piece of work by itself. Pricing has to be taken care of as part of your go-to-market strategy because that determines your success in the market. Now, let me start with another example of an Indian startup. So, if you see PepperTap, right? I'm sure many of us have actually used PepperTap, especially if we were in the Gurgaon region. So PepperTap was a hyper local grocery startup, and in 2014 they actually raised $51.2 million in funding. Right at that point in time, it did appear like PepperTap was going to become the next big, unicorn. And it did appear like they were on an extremely fast-tracked growth path. However, 2 years later, PepperTap shut down. PepperTap went with a zero inventory model by having a lot of connections with local banyas and local grocery stores. They also went with a mobile-first strategy, and they were very quickly available on, all the channels. However, they made two crucial mistakes when it came to pricing. PepperTap focused extremely on building a really large and a loyal customer base, but they were willing to sacrifice the money that they were able to make on these customers. So this is often the dilemma of many startups. Even in a freemium model, many startups believe that acquiring a customer is extremely important, even if the customer is non-paying, and they will add value to us in the long run. And that is what PepperTap also believed. They built themselves on a discount model to build a large and loyal customer base. However, their cost of customer acquisition was extremely high. In addition to that, they were also losing cash on every single order. And if they continued, had they continued on the same path, they would have run out of funding very quickly. So there are several other examples of startups which have received funding, but because they adopt a model where they try to offer high discounts or where they are priced at a very low point and are trying to acquire more and more customers, tend to lose. So PepperTap very soon realized that this was not going to be a sustainable business model, and to protect the investors' money, they shut down. So this is just one example of how a wrong pricing affects a startup, even which is funded. Now, if we look at the B2B space, right? 2 out of every 10 startups fail because of an ill-formed pricing strategy. Gaurav, on the next slide. Yeah. So there are there are quite a few mistakes that one could make, but Tyler Gaffney had worked with over 50 plus early stage startups who had received seed funding to figure out what were the common mistakes in pricing that these startups had made. These were all B2B startups in very early stages. And these were the top 4 mistakes that were identified. And if you see, the first one starts with the customers. So as you can see throughout this journey of building a product and taking it to market, the most important aspect of it is customers. You are centered around your customers. So what Gaffney found is a lot of companies actually, just sit behind the computer screens trying to figure pricing out. They try to do a ton of benchmarking and research and whatnot, and then without ever talking to a customer, not even one, prices are set. So that's why we use the term prices are conjured without customers. It's like magic. The second is, say if you're not really doing the first mistake, the second mistake is, I will, I as a founder, and it's actually a common psychological trap as well that many startup founders fall into. They pick a price and then they get a few, affirming nods from their colleagues, and also possibly a few early leads as well. And then they declare, yeah, I know that is it. This is the price we are taking this to the market. Now, founders pick what should be a pricing starting point, but actually they stick to it as if it is the permanent solution, even though their businesses are growing and changing. And eventually this approach breaks down. So if you set your prices in stone and not in a dynamic way, if your prices do not change as your product grows or as your business grows, or if you're not really experimenting with your pricing at different points in time, you will tend to lose in the long run. The next one is, this is very interesting. So even the most confident teams who have amazing products in whose value that they deeply and strongly believe in also price the product very low. I have also personally encountered several early stage startup founders who have priced their products too low. I mean, very rarely, or if at all ever, I have never met, to be honest, an early stage founder who has priced their product too high. So even before you take it to your prospective customer, these founders have decided that, maybe I'm not going to win deals if I price it at this point. So let me rather price the product lower and then interpret where on this pricing spectrum I have landed. And that's how most of the founders talk themselves into the discounted side of the pendulum. Now, it is actually this fear or instinct is going to be very problematic, especially when it is paired with the rampant belief that it is very hard to raise prices, but that lowering them is easier. So people often go with that strategy. Okay, let me lower my price to win a deal. I might not be able to raise the price because I might not win this deal. So if you've already started from a very low price and are also hesitant to raise it over time, then you're already capping your growth. So pricing your product or service too low is another major pitfall that several startup founders fall into. Then there is the other side of the spectrum, where startups, not only do they just feel locked into a price, other startups are trying to innovate too much on the pricing structure. So say, for example, in a competitive market, customers are already used to buying in a certain way, such as maybe a monthly fee or a per transaction. Now, anything which is very different, like such as charging per API call, can be a very high barrier for customers to understand and adapt. But several startups actually fall into this pitfall. They try to figure out, is there an innovative way for me to come up with a pricing structure that makes me stand out in the market and still gives me the right value or return on investment. However, when customers have to learn and adapt and understand a very new pricing model, they tend to stay away from such a product, even if it is going to solve for their needs extremely well. So, for example, on Intrepid, I was just looking at it, and Intrepid worked with one of the companies where they wanted to charge on a per location basis. However, the industry that the customers were in were used to being charged per employee. So most of the prospects that this startup reached out to couldn't wrap their heads around it. And the startup did not really go very far until they changed their pricing strategy. So the mistake number 4 is pricing structure is extremely over-engineered, where it becomes a barrier for customers to understand and adapt. So these are the 4 most common mistakes that B2B startups make when it comes to pricing decisions. Now, moving to the next slide, right? As I was saying, to determine a price for your product, you must be willing to experiment. Of course, I will get into the most common ways in which pricing is done by B2B companies. However, companies which really succeed and go really far and get the right return on investment are those which are willing to conduct pricing experiments. Now, I'm not necessarily talking about an A/B testing or something like that. Unless you're really like Amazon and you have a lot of customers and you're very sure about your product in that space, the pricing experiments are best done on a one-on-one basis with your prospects. But most importantly, your pricing experiments must serve one or more of the drivers of your GTM strategy. So, price is a very important aspect of your GTM, and the rest of your GTM strategy must come together for this price to be effective in that market. Now, some of the most common drivers of GTM strategy could be getting your first 5 publicly referenceable customers, or securing 1 or more key account customer logos, or maybe maximizing your revenue, gaining market share, right? Normally, it is one of these that you're chasing after at any given point in time. And each of these goals has a different optimization method, and it is often at the cost of another method. If you're trying to secure your first 5 publicly referenceable customers, your top priority isn't maximizing revenue at this point, right? It is actually making sure that these customers see the value of your product. Now, these are the people that will help you get a lot more customers. So in the very early days, your strategy is more about getting established and then moving forward. So for example, if you are a workplace collaboration app, like a new workplace collaboration app, and you're trying to onboard your first 5 customers, say you have identified or determined that you may be able to charge $30,000 in annual contract value for these customers that have more than 1,000 end users. Let's say this is a hypothesis you have come up with based on some secondary research. Now, before you actually fix on this price and go to a prospect and say, hey, this is the price I will sell my product at, it is recommended that you go to your top 5 prospects and talk about this price through a conversation. We will talk about the what exactly are you discussing in those conversations. So you have these have a customer development conversation with your prospects. Gather their feedback and say, for example, it is highly possible that they will be adverse to the price you're quoting, right? Ask open-ended questions that expose the root cause of their anxiety and then re-evaluate. So it is very important before you, especially as a B2B startup, it is very important that you have these experiments on a one-on-one level with your prospects, and as much as possible not really rely on email surveys or some such thing, because it is extremely important as a B2B startup to have those personal connects with your customers. Now, going to the next slide. Now, customer development is very crucial for early stage startups before one is able to make a pricing decision, as I said. Now, what do these customer development questions really get you as a B2B startup, right? Why should I even be asking these questions in the first place? Why should I go and talk? From these questions, you're able to determine 2 things. Now, the first one is, what is the upper bound for your product? That is, what is the highest price the market will allow you to charge for the value you provide? And the second one is the anchor. Now, your upper bound is a dollar figure, but your anchor is something that the customer compares your product against. Like, what exactly are you replacing in your customer's mind? Now, based on your conversations, always set the anchor to something that the customer understands. Like, maybe our software replaces the need for a HR administrator who typically makes around $75,000 every year, or something of that sort. So that is what you will be ending up with when you conduct these customer development discussions. Now, some of the questions that you might want to ask your early or neutral prospects are these. Like, what are the various solutions that they use today, and what is the value that they see in a product or a solution that you might be offering? Like, when you're talking to customers, be more open-ended. Do not ask close-looped questions like yes or no questions. Leave a lot of room for conversation. Let your customer talk about what they feel about the solution, what they feel even before you go to the solution, what they feel about their problems. Maybe they have other problems which are unmet. That could also open up another avenue for you. Then slowly inch into asking and understanding what might be an acceptable price for a product that solves the problem that they are talking about. Now, in a B2B setting, there are 3 types of Uber customers one could be looking at, right? If you're thinking of a market segment. You have large enterprises, you have small and medium businesses, and then you have really early stage startups, other early stage startups to whom you could be catering to. Now, depending upon the enterprise, the acceptable price also could change. There is a lot of room and flexibility for a small and a medium business who are themselves trying to scale up if you're offering a product which helps them scale up in the market. While because of years of conditioning in a really large enterprise, they might have more more guardrails in place that they have to adhere to, and they might not be able to go beyond a point. And also, what is a very expensive price is also determined upon, again, the stage of the company that you're actually talking to. What is the kind of company your prospect really is, and also depending upon the budget that they themselves have in the company. So these are some of the things that you could do when you're developing in the customer development stage to before you make a pricing decision. So as we see, we've understood what are the common mistakes that a B2B startup could make when it comes to pricing, and where and how they can start these pricing decision discussions. So even before you have decided on a price, you should essentially be talking to more and more customers wherever possible. And whenever possible, and you should get more insights. Now, after you have done all this, right, most B2B startups eventually adopt one of these three pricing strategies. Quickly moving on to the next slide. Yeah. So, and these are the most, so there are about 12 pricing strategy, of which these are the three crucial ones that apply to a B2B startup, right? The first one is your cost plus pricing strategy. And the second is your competitive pricing strategy. And finally, your value-based pricing strategy. Now, the cost plus pricing strategy is actually the simplest and the easiest to implement. All that you're saying is, if I manufacture a product, or if the cost of creating this product or service is $100 and I'm looking for a profit or a markup of, say, $10 per piece, or whatever, however we might see, you add the cost and whatever is the profit that you're trying to make, and you price your product as that. So say, for example, if I'm offering a HR solution, which costs me about $100 to manufacture or prepare as a solution, and I'm expecting that I will receive, or I want to receive, at least $20 in profit. I want to make $20 as profit. Then I will sell this product at $120 per piece, is how one looks at in terms of cost plus pricing strategy. Now, as a B2B startup, this is something that normally experts discourage one from using, because it lacks initiative. There is a lot of isolation, and most importantly, lack of customer engagement. You're not really coming from a customer's point of view at this point in time. You're just looking at, oh, this is my cost being your most important component, and you're considering all the costs, and you're looking to make a X profit, and you're done. However, though we say that please do not use this strategy, there might be situations where you might pick this one, but eventually pivot to the one of the other two. You don't have enough time to do your market, customer, or competitive research. Now, this is a big no-no. Ideally, without doing any of this, as a B2B startup, you should not be entering the market at all. However, if there is some pressing need, and as a result you're doing this, then this is a pricing strategy you could go for. Or if your product line does not have too much variation in price competition, at that point maybe this is a strategy you could consider, but as much as possible stay away from cost plus pricing strategy. Now, coming to competitive pricing strategy, this is a very interesting one. Now, this is commonly used by a lot of B2B startups, right? Especially if you're caught in the e-commerce race or market, and there is a lot of price race that happens, then you are trying to look at what your competitors are pricing their products at. So a very simple way to do this is you determine your price index by looking at the pricing of all the competitors in that market that you're going to enter, and divide it by the number of competitors. That is your pricing index, and that gives you a pretty fair starting point to price your product. However, because you're gauging the price competitiveness relative to the competitors, there are disadvantages because of the same, right? Now your final price is not really talking about or showing the value you're creating to your customers. You're not really standing out in the market from your competition. It just feels like you're another vanilla solution that is available out there, and customer can pick or choose any one of the solutions based on the price and price alone. However, competitive pricing strategy results in a pretty much accurate price because you're deriving it out from your competitors' pricing, but choose wisely as to what is the kind of market you're entering, how competitive it is, and how unique or vanilla a solution you're trying to offer. And finally, value-based pricing strategy. More often than not, this is the strategy that people or experts advise startups, B2B startups to go after. Always describe the value you would be delivering to your customers, and price is a function of the value you deliver. So this is extremely customer friendly, high touch, allows you to become a partner, and offers more opportunities for larger profit. However, it is a very binary outcome, right? Profitability should go up if you use value-based pricing, because if it doesn't, then you have just proven to yourself that if you're not able to turn the value you're adding into your pricing model, you might not be in the right market. So to really put it simply, instead of complicating all of that, what you're doing in a specific use case might not actually be worth doing. So if you're in a value-based pricing strategy and you're not really making a profit, then you're not in the right market. And finally, you control the narrative if you're doing a value-based pricing strategy, and how customers, position what you do versus what the alternatives offer in the market. So you pick the positioning vectors you want to be measured against that determine what value is and what you are willing to pay. Sorry, what they are willing to pay. Controlling that messaging and positioning is extremely powerful because it will keep you away from being a price fighter or commoditized in conversations you have with your prospects. All of this is dependent on the value denominator, and the value that you're offering could be based on either per user like Salesforce, a T-Mobile plan, or it could be per device, usage volume like cloud storage, or a duration, how long have you been using like SaaS products. So these are some of the examples for value-based pricing strategy. So you could choose one of these pricing strategies to start with, and if you believe that from cost plus pricing you would want to pivot very quickly, you can pivot to the other pricing strategies as well to suit your needs. Now, after you have determined what is the pricing strategy that you will go after, it is very important for an early stage, on the next slide, it is very important for an early stage startup, right, to show their confidence and signal. First of all, you need to increase your confidence in the price that you're offering, and second, signal it in all of your conversations with your prospects. So one of the key things here is
मम्मी की है मेरी तो ये है ना पापा मम्मी की है Yes, Sowmya, you can go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So you will start with you qualify before you quantify. So what I'm really getting at here is when you start a when you start a selling discussion, because pricing eventually means you're now trying to pitch this solution to your customers or prospects. So very often startup founders lead with the price, that is the quantification versus the qualification. The prospects are not earning the price. So as a startup founder, or if you have a sales team or a marketing team that is going to pitch this to your prospects, it is very important to always start by qualifying your product or service. Understand your prospects' problems and how well your solution will solve those problems better for your prospects. Only after you know that your prospects have understood the value your product is offering, that is when you quantify it. And that is when you talk about pricing. Softly close with the price versus leading with the price. Now, the second thing is you deliver your price in real time. Even when we are talking really large companies, the early stage startups, what they often do is they might send a quote in an email, or you might be talking about the price over phone. Now, you're not really HUL selling Colgate toothpaste to a customer, right? Now, you don't have to deliver or tell the price in real time to a consumer who's purchasing a $1 per tube toothpaste. However, when you're selling, say for example, a jet engine to a Veritas as a GE, then it is highly important for you to go and deliver your price in real time. So as a B2B startup, whenever you want to have these pricing conversations or you want to pitch, always make it real time, more face to face as much as possible. And even in those conversations, try to ask as many open-ended questions as possible to understand why a customer might not be willing to purchase your product at the price you're offering. The third one is more often, because you're in a startup stage, there's a lot of money that you have invested and you're seeking validation from the market. What most of us do is we panic if prospects react adversely. So please do not do that. Be calm and do not really go and offer a discounted price just because a prospect said, sorry, this is not a price we would be willing to purchase your product at. Try to understand from the prospect's perspective as to why would they not want to do that. Is it because they have budgeting constraints? Is it because the prospect you're talking to is not the right purchase decision maker? Or is there any other barrier for moving? Is the change management high? Is the switching cost high? So try to understand their perspective versus panicking and trying to go low and discounting your product. So these are some of the things that one could do to really increase your confidence in any of the pricing discussions you might have with your prospects. So in conclusion, if you really see the journey of 1,000 steps, right, starts with your first step. Now, if you're really looking at becoming an extremely valuable, successful, impactful and value-giving startup and eventually a large organization, you have to take the first step, which is creating an amazing go-to-market strategy. What we learned today or understood as a team today was first, to build a great GTM strategy, you have to identify what are the jobs to be done growth strategies that are applicable to you as a B2B startup. What space are you operating in and what is the strategy that you will apply? Then you create a rock solid GTM strategy using the 7-step framework. Then you would adopt a suitable pricing strategy based on customer conversations and ensure that your pricing strategy is not set in stone, and you will keep experimenting with it. Also, always ensuring that the GTM strategy that you have is a living document and not a one-time effort, taking a lot of inputs from all your stakeholders and constantly refining it and refreshing it. You would not know how successful you are or the failures you might encounter if you do not track your progress. So track your progress and pivot wherever necessary. And finally, build a product or service that your customers absolutely love. So that is all I had for today.
Thanks, Sowmya. I guess this was an amazing session. I've already started getting the feedback, that people have started asking for the recordings, the presentation, and then they want to connect with you. I guess this was a really amazing.
Sure, thank you, Gaurav.
Thank you. And we're gonna take the Q&A now. So if you have questions, you can either drop it in the chat box, or you can raise your hand and we'll let you speak the questions. So we already have the first first person who want to ask. So it's Sowmya Murthy. Sowmya, if you can unmute yourself and ask the question.
Yeah, hi, good evening. Good evening, Sowmya.
Hi, Sowmya.
We are into healthcare space and we are trying to work on, healthcare cost analytics. Okay, this is actually practically the difficulty what I'm facing. I'm trying to post it to you. So when we, out of these three pricing strategies, of course, we didn't go with the cost plus probably, without knowing this, how I thought is like, one is the difficulty, yes, we have with the data, all that is there at the other side. Coming to the pricing strategy, we couldn't go with the competitive pricing strategy because there is no other service provider providing exactly the cost analytics service right now. So when it comes to value based, having as a person having worked inside the hospital and it's very complex accounting system. So though it is the sense is that we will create a value, we'll be able to make savings, we'll be able to help them to improve their margin. All is that like we are trying to offer, but we are not able to get into the data and uh, provide them. We see so much is the saving or so much is the value. Like because that data is not once again available to us.
Correct.
So really we were struck like how to, if I say I'm going to create value for you or I'm going to improve your margin. So unless after implementing all our services and once we have the data only we can do that. So that is also not possible. So finally what we adapted is okay fine, kind of combination of cost, data analysis and clinical and IT. That's a kind of combination of service we are going to provide. We would provide you in not a price point like where you are in a senior level accountant. Even if you pay for one account guy, that is a level we would charge and we'll provide you lot more value for it. We don't know how to pitch this. We thought one this way would be more attractive with them because they know senior accounting guy who is working there, inter CA or MCOM with 5-year experience, what they could offer, and which I'm going to tell you like four or five services which he could not offer. I'm going to do you at the same price. So I thought this would be more attractive for them. Really, I don't know. You can validate here is the right way to approach.
Got it. There is thanks a lot for taking us through your journey, Sowmya, and Of course, there is quite a bit to unpack here. So what I understand is you do not have any competitors in this space to really benchmark and say, this is the price point I will enter. However, this gives you a unique situation, right? And where you're talking a lot about the value you're trying to create. So one of the ways your bigger concern stems from the fact that you're really not able to quantify the value that this will offer to your customers. So maybe one of the ways you could actually look at this is you would want to pivot and talk to these senior accountants in the org, that in the hospitals that you're working with, to understand what are the top other problems that you're solving for. Now, creating extra margins or giving them additional revenue using your analytics, right, is one of the ways in which you're quantifying the success of your offering. Now, there could be many other success criteria or metrics that you might want to track. So it is imperative that when you do not really know what is the right quantifying metric, pivot and try to understand what are the other desires that your customers at this point in time have, and is there any other metric that you can talk to. So because you cannot really do competitive pricing, and cost-based pricing is not something that one would recommend here, it is important for you to determine those metrics. Only then you would be able to provide a much better pitch to your customers and say, hey, these are the things that will happen when you use my service. So we can take this offline as well, and we can take a look at what is it that you're asking your customers, what are the data points you have, and what is the kind of pivot you might want here. Now, coming to the strategy you were talking about, where you're offering a price for specific features based on the number of users, like the type of the user, like someone who is a super user of sorts. And despite not having XYZ functionality, you would still be willing to provide them at a particular cost. Now, what you have to do even in this situation is, because you're looking at the value, what is really motivating this senior accountant to use your software, right? And are there any other barriers? Sometimes it might not even be about the value your product is creating, right? There could be so many other barriers in terms of usage, in adoption, right? You might want to figure those out as well, because more often than not, we pivot on pricing because we feel others are holding off, and they're not willing to purchase just because of the price. Maybe your price is absolutely right, but there are other factors that could be contributing to the situation.
Thank you, Sowmya. Definitely, I'll connect you offline and then have a deeper discussion into this.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you
Thanks,
so much.
Sowmya. Right. Ashwin, can you unmute yourself and ask the question?
Hi, Sowmya. Can you hear?
Yes.
Ashwin.
Hey, this is Ashwin, co-founder and CEO of CustomFit.ai. Basically, we are a kind of hyper personalization platform where our platform helps the companies to convert their website traffic to quality leads. By showcasing the content which is tailor made to each and every visitor, as if your solution is custom made to that particular visitor thing. Right. So basically, we serve the like there is no geography. Basically, we serve B2B companies. B2B SaaS is our low, the target companies look at. Right. So one question I have around this thing is like, what's your opinion with respect to the closed pricing and open pricing? Currently, we have the closed pricing model where we don't reveal what's the, what's the like if even if you go to our website also, there is a pricing page, but we use that as a hack kind of the thing where we ask the people to leave their email ID so that okay, we'll send you the pricing slot. So then actually we try to reach out to them, like, hey, this is the different set of the of services what we have, and the corresponding service can be we can discuss over a call, kind of the thing.
Sure.
Right. So what like basically, and one thing what actually we realized is, okay, since we serve the Indian customers, US, UK and all, right, there is a lot of change, and to be very frank, we are in the pricing discovery mode to adjust, okay, fine tune based on the what the value which we are providing it out. Still actually it's a we are like, we need to find that very sweet cut spot where we can showcase the we can pinpointedly say that, okay, hey, this is the pricing what we can offer. One of the constraints, what one of the instance, one of the dependency what we showcase is, it's based on price is based on the monthly unique visitors. That's one of the attribute what we showcase when we try to talk the different slots and all. But I would like to understand from your opinion, how this kind of the closing model, closed pricing can be developed.
Derogatory to customers is where you're hinting at. Is it good for you, or is it bad for you?
In our case, like, since actually there is a very different set of the customers who comes, like, even for the same segment of the audience, there will be different pricing what we give.
Correct.
So
okay.
yeah.
So so what I was hinting at, Ashwin, is are you asking whether following an open pricing strategy is better, or having this kind of a closed pricing strategy is better? Is that your question in your scenario? And
Yes.
how is it really perceived by your customers in the market, especially B2Bs, right? That's a great question. And so again, there is no one size fits all. Sounds very cliched, but there is no one size fits all strategy here, right? So it depends on the kind of B2B startups that you are actually dealing with. Now, I can take another industry example where, similar product, doing exactly same things, offer two different kinds of pricing, right? I deal with payroll product and payroll for B2B business. I mean, this is for small businesses. Now, if you're looking at a smaller scale or a smaller sized business, and you're trying to generate leads for these businesses, they are also very cost sensitive, right? So they would want to make a choice based on various options that are available. And for these customers, having several, fixed costs, telling them that these are the tiers that you have, you can choose one of these and go ahead and use it, makes a lot of sense, because they are very price sensitive. They are looking at what are the options available, and they would want it to be publicly known. Now, coming to larger B2B companies, right? These are the companies that would want a high touch solution, customized offerings. And even if you do not really quote a price on your website, these are the companies that are willing to, understand, negotiate, talk about the value that they want to derive from your solution, and what is, the best price point that you can both arrive at and agree upon. So as I said, there is no real good or bad way of pricing this in any of the markets, right? It only depends upon the size of the customer base or the type of the customer base that you're dealing with and what their wants are.
Yeah, makes sense. And just a follow up on that thing, the other thing is, like, with respect to regional pricing, no case, okay, if we are targeting India segment, kind of the thing, it's a kind of price sensitive market. Even in the APAC side, it's a price sensitive market. Even when we showcase it for the low touch, like for a small set of the audience, this is the starting prices and all. That can also be significantly differs when US and India side. Like, what do you suggest? Okay, in that case, even just maintain the low and basically the closed model, and send them the pricing like as a in form of the email or any other communications, better than putting onto the website.
Yeah, I would still, would want you to experiment a little on this. However, I do know of several companies that operate in different geographies, having different types of customers, and follow a combination of offering the tiers. So you can always say star, right? And if there is some additional thing that you want to add on, you can always contact your customers and say, this is what we will customize for you. But ideally, geographies, just because you're operating in two different geographies, might not necessarily mean that you always have to just follow a closed price model, because eventually as you scale up, right, you might, it is actually extremely high touch for the volumes you might be operating in, and you might not be willing to really, eventually follow that model when you're dealing with smaller businesses.
Makes thanks.
Thanks. So before we get on to the next question, I would request everyone to please fill in the feedback form that I have posted in the chat option. It will just take a minute or so of your time. Would request you. This would help us actually to curate the next sessions as well as work towards how to reach out to you better. All right. Thank you, everyone. So yes, we are open for more questions. If anyone has any question, please you can raise your hand and we'll let you ask the question.
Hi, this is Amadeep. I've raised my hand for quite some time. I don't know whether you're able to see that or not.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. Sowmya, first and foremost, an awesome session. So thank you so much for that. Thanks for taking the time to actually walk us through these nitty-gritties of GTM. We are in the thick of figuring out both our GTM as well as the pricing strategies. We work specifically in a sector which is the Canadian energy sector, focused on the market around Calgary, which is massively, which is where you have roughly the third largest oil reserves in the world. So we are a relatively young startup, about a year old only, and I had a few questions. First, you said about pricing experiments. So main drivers could be 5 publicly referenceable customers to securing a kind of key or an elephant customer. What is your opinion in terms of just road mapping? And that's what I've been working with my team, especially on this question of 5. Get the first 5 pilots out before you go after one of the large corporates. So and only at that point should we, after the first 5 publicly referenceable customers, should we be looking at maximizing revenues, etc. So and the debate has been around this, especially around in the initial stage when you're trying to get the 5 publicly referenceable B2B customers. Let's ensure that we are very clear on our cost plus, but may have to do some trade-offs.
Correct.
So it's not a straightforward answer, but just wanted your opinion on that. We've done one pilot. We are sitting down with the customer to identify the value that we provided, but at that time we basically it was an unbudgeted project for them. So whatever money they had, we just took it. It was a decision we made at that time, like it's investment into the business. Not that we want to follow that again, but just your opinion on these aspects, please.
So thanks a lot, Adi. And this is a very interesting question. The industry barring, this is something that most of the B2B startups actually go through, right? Because you're trying to get your first 5 referenceable customers. It is good to make trade-offs, but how low ball is your price and how low are you going becomes extremely important. So it is also about how sustainable the model is going to be eventually. Now, first thing, as I said, you should not set your price in stone, and it should be more dynamic. And even for the customer with whom you have a current relationship, eventually over time, for the value you offer, you should be looking at avenues of increasing your price. Just like one is willing to go low, you must be willing to go higher as well.
Yeah. So
takeaway here.
Yeah, we did explain to them that, look, this was just a trade-off we made because it was an unbudgeted project.
Correct.
And the customer, first customer who was willing to be absolutely referenceable and also giving their own staff and their time and whatnot. So it was a trade-off for us.
Got it. So in the long run, the way I understand it is this has been a good win-win at least, right? It is not like you have, I mean, that's the sense I'm getting from what you're telling us. So then it's a great way for you to trade off on the price initially. However, if your first 5 prospects or the referenceable customers that you get should not lowball you so much that your sustenance becomes a problem.
Yeah.
At that point, it is very important for you to look for other prospects in your in the target audience versus going extremely low just because you want to acquire your first 5.
So, I mean, the next couple of ones are where we've already we are already discussing with them, and they've basically said, if the payback period is 12 months, we are willing to go with whatever you are going to charge.
Okay.
So it is already getting into the value-based thing where they are saying, okay, tell me what my value is. If I can make back that money in 12 months, fine. We are ready to go. And that is a negotiation. That's the thing that we are now negotiating. And I think that's one way it is emblematic of that particular market where they can talk in payback periods. So it is a little easy to have that discussion, only it's a little more difficult for us to kind of quantify the value so early without having done a couple of these experiments.
Got it. Got it. I think, as I said, start always by talking to other non-prospects as well. So these could be your non-consumers at this point in time. Understand for a solution of this kind, what is the value that they seek, right? And is there an equivalent solution that they are already using? Maybe these customers that you talk to are not your current prospects or your next 5 prospects, but please go ahead and talk to them before you can really quantify the value that you're offering.
Sure. Thank you. And again, thank you so much for the time. And could we have your presentation, please?
Sure.
Right. So do we have any more questions from anyone? You can raise your hand. Please, Amy 19.
Hey, my name is Vardhi Srinivas.
Yeah.
How can I connect with Sowmya offline? Because I have a lengthy question, but in the interest of time, if one-to-one connect is possible, how can we do that?
Right. So you can send your query to us.
Okay.
And we'll connect you to Sowmya.
Okay, great. That works. Okay, I was waiting for that. Okay, thanks. That helps. Sure.
So, yeah, I think if there are any other questions, Gaurav, if they can reach out to you, would be willing to answer them offline as well. So that would be all right.
I guess, please. Yeah, Sowmya, you wanted to say something?
No, I said that's all I had from my end, and I just wanted to thank everyone for joining today, and hope it helped folks a little at least.
Yes, I'm already getting actually requests for connecting to you, or they think that, I mean, the feedback's been really good till now. Thank you for kind to and delivering the overall content.
Sure.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. don't forget to fill in the feedback form, that option. For us. Thank you.